Hey, greetings, friends. Jacque Howard here, and thank you for a couple of minutes of your time. This series is a a special series from Bridge the Vote. Trenton 365 presents Bridge the Vote, part of Jacque's Reach. This segment, Bridge the Vote, talks specifically about politics. And when we talk about politics under Bridge the Vote, which is a Facebook page, the Facebook page is Bridge the Vote. Under Bridge the Vote, we don't support any candidates. We come and bring information from an unbiased, nonpartisan perspective. We're constantly reaching out to all kinds of candidates, whatever their positions are, because we believe at Bridge the Vote, the most important thing is to make sure that we're presenting information and let the people get the information for them to decide on their own. We're not pushing you towards any particular candidate. I don't tell anybody who I vote for. I definitely do not support any candidates personally or any of those things. This is really about civics and the importance of bringing everyone together under the auspices of what civics looks like. And what that looks like, it means we need to be aware and educated about all of the folks who are running or seeking to run or lead us as people. And if we don't do that, then that means that we are missing out on a grand opportunity to make a major impact in our current and future lives of everyone around us in our different communities if we do not pay attention to who we are electing and the laws and the ordinances and the rules that they are making. So with that being said, under this series, I'm very fortunate to be able to spend some time walking the streets of downtown Trenton, talking to folks, in particular BIPOC people who are Indigenous, Black, Latino, Hispanic, or consider themselves people of color. And while doing that, I was able to engage with some folks, and I'm going to be sitting down and chatting now with Larry Paul. Larry Paul is someone who I've met probably decades ago, but didn't even know it. But I got a chance to reconnect with him in the last few years. And during this time, I've been able to, while being reintroduced to him and our relationship growing, I've been able to see how he's grown into this professional person, which he is now. We're going to have Larry talk a little bit about his background, but from a high level perspective, I'm going to say that he's got a finance background. He has an accounting degree. In addition to that, he has taught financial literacy. He's done tax preparedness courses and doing taxes for people. In addition to that, he's currently in the space of nonprofit leadership and directorship. He's also working with different municipalities, even at the county and local municipal level, to educate the general population about a multitude of different things that are part of civics. So today we're going to be talking specifically with Larry Paul from the perspective of being a Black/African American man here in New Jersey, being college educated, being in the workforce, having a perspective of real estate development, owning his own property, those things. That dynamic of the younger people, 20s, 30s, 40s, that every municipality wants to get them into the community. So I'm going to be asking him some questions about where he is with civic engagement, the importance of voting, but also for him to share his thoughts about his generation, vaguely, and what that looks like on the national level, without putting him into any space where he's endorsing a candidate or saying who he's voting for. That's not what this is about. We want to give him and others an opportunity to share from their own perspective what's going on regarding civics and voting, et cetera. Larry Paul, thank you so much for a couple of minutes of your time. I know it's a very busy time of the year for everyone, but I want you to just do a brief introduction, build it off of what I missed out on, and then I want to get right into talking to you about civics and about voting and the importance of it. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome, man. And so, what I really would like to talk about, I'm going to talk about my background a little bit. So, I am from Trenton, New Jersey. I grew up in Hamilton Township, graduated from Hamilton High West, and civics started I started building this interest in civics in 10th grade. In 10th grade, George Bush was running for his second term against John Kerry, and my history teacher challenged me to watch the presidential debate that year. It was the first presidential debate. And what I noticed when I did this, it was not a graded report, so I technically did not have to. She just questioned me. She seen intelligence in me. And when I was listening to it for the first time, I did it without having any influence from my parents, from my friends. And I realized I agreed with a lot of stuff the Republican guy said. And I said, you know what? I need to kind of make sure I agree with what I agree with. And so ever since from a young early age, I've been interested in civics and government engagement and what goes on and how it affects our lives. And so as you have mentioned, I do have an accounting degree. And the first college that I went to was Morgan State University, HBCU down in Baltimore, Maryland. And man, one of the few things that they taught me before I ended up leaving Morgan State was how prideful it is and you should be to be a black man. But also they taught how much we influence the voting system in America. And so as I've traveled throughout my life and I meet amazing people and I do partnerships because I've made business and financial literacy like the staple of my life, I get to meet, there's pillars in the community. There's four pillars, right? There's churches, there's for-profits, there's nonprofits, and there's government. And so if you want to be an impactful person in your community, you have to have some type of engagement with those four nucleuses of a community. And around 2021, 2022, I started to get more engaged when it comes to that. A little bit of influence from Darren Green and Miss Pearline Waters. Miss Pearline Waters said, you got to be a civics trustee. And she had me do that. And I took that course and I learned about the no blame approach. Gosh, that empowered me so much, man. It helped me change my mindset on politics because I stopped blaming about who did what or why it was this person's problem. I started to be more of an action oriented based person. All right, so how do we solve it? What's the solutions? And it also helped me see who wasn't progressing the same. If you're constantly focused on the problems of yesterday, you cannot be focused on the solutions of tomorrow, right? And so it just helped me kind of framework what's important. And so I have what I like to do, because I don't like to influence the way people vote as well. I can be a very influential person to different people in different spaces. And when in voting is number one, it's supposed to be selfish. And what do I mean by that? Because a lot of people hear that word and they take it the wrong way sometimes. But I mean, it's supposed to be personal for you. What is important to you should kind of drive how you're voting. So for me, I'm a business guy, I'm in accounting, I like economics, right? And so normally the tax code, the economic plan, the stimulus packages, these are the things I'm paying attention to when I'm making my voting decision, right? So certain topics, right, like abortion, right? That's important to me, but it's not high on my priorities list. Now, if you were talking to my wife who's in the medical field, who is a black woman, then her that might be higher on her priorities list than economics, right? But voting is supposed to be selfish, right? My wife is not supposed to change how she feels or who she votes for because of what I'm doing. We all have our individual votes. And so this is what I like to preach to people first and foremost, because once you're able to get selfish, you make it fun. Like, why do I want to vote? Who do I want to vote for? Right now it becomes a game. Like, who can earn my vote the best? This is also why I'm registered independent. It's not because I don't like Democrats or Republicans. It's just I like to make them work for my vote a little bit, right? Come and tell me why I should go with you. Come and tell me why I'm an American, right? And that's the one thing sometimes we have to zoom out of. We are all Americans, which means I get to choose whichever party I feel with. And we have multiple parties, right? We have a Constitution Party, a Green Party, Libertarian Party, and they haven't been able to raise the awareness and the capital to get on the big stage. But I feel like Americans can see we're getting tired of that two-party system a little bit, right? So it's important to just know what's out there. So selfish. I talk about selfish a little bit, and I say that because to me, when I think about government, I think of Milton Friedman. He's an economist. Nobel Prize winning from 1976. He had a lot to do with President Reagan's term and just guiding America. But he had a lot of good things. Right now, I hear people talking so much about the border, right? The border. And he had a very, I want to say, interesting comment on having people who might be illegal coming into the country. And he said, it's not a problem unless we give them services, unless we give them rights, social security and things like that, right? Because then they start costing Americans, right? So the problem isn't illegals, it's how we're handling them and how we're just allowing people to vote and stuff like that. And so selfishness, I like to roll that into voter suppression. That's a big topic. We want to talk about how do we get as many people to vote as possible, right? And simply put, it's about influence. I look at some of the biggest movements in our culture, from Martin Luther King to Barack Obama, and a lot of it was they were able to captivate the influence of the younger voting population and get them to participate. So if you ever hear somebody saying my vote doesn't count, or I'm not voting because we not heard, they have never seen what the power of organization and participation can do. And so that is what they're lacking, right? So now I want to speak to my community, because if you're watching this, you can see I'm obviously a Black man. And so why is it important for Black people to vote? Um, I think it's important because of two particular years, 1870 and 1965. 1870, the 15th Amendment to the Constitution. And the Constitution is my favorite American document, okay? So that's when we got the right to actually vote on the Constitution. In 1965 was when we ironed out all the details and got the civil rights, right? And so those two dates, they allow me to see the power of voting, right? Sometimes trust is when you have to see something and it prove it to you. Faith is sometimes you just got to believe stuff. I truly believe voting has power. And I believe that because of the progress of our community since 1870, 1965. If you look at our diets, if you look at our life expectancy, if you look at so many things in our community have gotten better, but so many people's mindsets are still stuck in those times. And so I do think it's important to be a part, but also progress. We should not be in the 90s anymore, selling drugs and having police versus community raid fights and stuff like that. That's 1990s. That's drug stuff. We shouldn't be there anymore. It's time to start our new generation, right? And today we are in silver rights. Not civil rights, silver. Meaning we're fighting for equity, we're fighting for money, we're fighting for power, right? Because now we have more of an even stage. And so this is why voting needs to be more important to our community, because so you can control, and not only control, but be aware of where the advantages are going to come from when it comes to voting, and why. And then last but not least, my nerdy reason, man. Like I said, preserving democracy, right? Because every 4 years we have the possibility of a new president, right? If we don't have a voting system, that transfer of power, as we've seen in 2021, could get really rough sometimes. If both parties don't agree, there could be riots, there could be danger, violence, all different types of things. And I think democracy is something that is worth fighting for. Being able to live in a civil society where you can respect each other, feel safe, sometimes we take it for granted in America because we've been born into it. But traveling, going to Jamaica, going to Antigua, to Mexico, and seeing different countries and what it could be like, it helps me understand how important this place is. And so I think there's just so many things that you can do when you pay attention. And the last thing I'll touch on is just things that you can change in your local economy. So I was a foster parent for 5.5 years. I lived in Jackson, New Jersey. And right next to Jackson, New Jersey is Lakewood. And me and my partner at the foster program, we used to go do our grocery shopping in Lakewood. Why? Because Lakewood had a heavily Hasidic Jewish population. And because of that, their sales tax rate, when the state of New Jersey's tax rate was 7%, theirs was 3.5%. So I used to save half the amount on taxes by shopping in Lakewood because that community changed their tax code just because of how they participate in their society. They don't use as many government infrastructure things. They feel like, hey, we don't have to, and they were able to do that. Now it's changed since COVID. So if you look it up, Lakewood is paying 6.6% like the rest of New Jersey now. But their community was able to make that change because they got together, went about it politically, and was able to get that law changed legislatively. So I think it's important to just understand what we can do when we vote, and it allows us to dream a little bit. It allows us to think what's more possible. And so these are just some of the reasons I talk to youth about, because if you're a person that is between the ages of 18 and 25, you are very important, but you might not feel like people my age or older are listening to you. And I'm 36, in case we didn't say it, but you are very important to us, man. Just like I was very important to Barack Obama getting in office, right? Because that was the first time I was able to vote, right? And we were just so excited. And so you want to make sure you get behind something, you're passionate about something, and it's personal to you. That's why I start off with being selfish. If economics isn't important to you, then you don't care that Janet Yellen is the Secretary of Treasury right now. But that's important to me, right? And so you have to figure out what's important to you and vote on that. And then also have conviction. You're going to run across people who are going to question you, especially if you have strong beliefs on this side. But guess what? That is your right as an American. No matter if all 300 million, the rest of us, do not agree with you, you have the right to be wrong. And sometimes we don't understand the power in that. If I want to have a thought process or believe something, I should be able to do that. Whether anybody else thinks it's better for me or not, that's one of the founding principles of being an American, right? Free speech, having what religion you want to have, right? We are able to do these things. And so sometimes I think having groupthink label mentality can be dangerous, right? Like with the black vote, right? Like Jacque, me and you are both black men. I'm pretty sure if we talk long enough, we're gonna find something we disagree with, right? So at what point does the black vote not really mean that, right? But this is I went to Araz Baraka. He announced that he was going to run for governor earlier, and he spoke about having an agenda. And I think that's the most important part about being a part of a group is having points that you can see you agree with other people on, right? And then also seeing if they don't agree. You might have points that people like, oh, these ain't okay. Maybe I got to change these up a little bit, right? But you got to have an agenda so you see where you stand, where you see, so other people can see if they align with you, and you can see where your allies are. But I hope I did a good job just explaining why voting is important to me and why it should be important to others.
Indeed, you did, and I'm glad you did, Larry. And I'm speaking with Larry Paul, and you'll be able to reach out to him at a later time once this is shared via the networks and the affiliations that we have. Big shout out to WING 1300, New Jersey's oldest radio station, and WPHY, the television portion. But in addition to that, it's also known as WZBN. And if you'd like to do some advertising, sharing some of your information, promoting what you're doing as an organization, reach out to us. You can give me a call directly at 609-433-0489. You can also go to the website Trenton, like the city, the numbers 365.com, Trenton365.com. Larry, I'm going to keep going on with this. And there's a couple of other things I want you to just touch on. One of them is your generation, 30-ish, where you're getting your information from. You and I know we're from the same region. Print media is not a thing so much in this area. It's definitely not a substantial source of information or current news. It probably leans more towards tabloid-like. So print media, which was a major source for information for folks, my age, 50 and up, but that's not really there anymore. So now we have this space where a lot of folks are getting information from the internet, whether that's social media sites, influencers, reprints or reshares of broadcasts off of television, et cetera. Can you just talk about where you're getting or your generation's getting a lot of your information from? And then if you could talk about the juxtaposition of how we can get a clear message out across many platforms?
So I would say that my generation is still tuning in to the Fox, to the CNNs, to the MSNs, and all of those, right? But we're just doing it in a different manner. We prefer 13 to 20-minute clips on YouTube, right? And so that is that we're not sitting in front of a TV on channel 5, right? Watching and seeing what they're and watching whole stations because people just value their time a little bit more. So I think that's the thing with my generation. Like we are also microwave over oven, right? So we want things immediately and fast, but sometimes that can also trick people up. So what I do personally is I try to watch everything. And I try to do that to get a good picture of the entire thing. If I only watch Democratic led media, what's going to happen is they're going to paint a certain picture of certain people, and I'm only going to have that narrative. But when you watch everything, you get to hear all narratives. You get to hear this side defend themselves and this side defend themselves, and then you get a little bit better picture. So I listen to a bunch of stuff. The Young Turks, which is a YouTube channel, which is great. They try to be very nonpartisan, but they have their leanings, right? I listen to oh man, I'll be on Pat Bet David. I listen to Pat PBD. No, I'm into insurance and making sure people are taken care of, but also he's getting into his political side a little bit more. So was able to see an interview with Donald Trump recently because we didn't get as many debates as we should just because of the nature of this election. And so I feel like my generation is absolutely going to social media, but the things that they're following to is back to the mainstream markets. Because that's what ends up popping up. Once I watch one video, then everything Kamala, I watched her interview for 60 Minutes the other day. And, I literally like to consume as much information as possible. What I would like to say, though, is I would not recommend you let your algorithm dictate that. So like don't just go on YouTube and watch the first video because what that's doing is it's kind of trying to say, okay, I kind of know you. I think you'll like this. And what'll happen is you'll just start getting a bunch of information that agrees with you. And that's fine, right? That's always good. We always want confirmation, but we don't want that at the beginning when we're forming our opinion because then we might just be feeling like this is right because we keep seeing it, we keep agreeing with it. You got to test your theories. You got to go and watch this. So I encourage turn on Fox, see what they're saying. Watch long enough for you to say, you know what, these people crazy. I don't agree with this, right? Or long enough to say, this is my God. And so I think social media is just it's here to stay. So it's no point in fighting it. But what we should be doing is telling people how to navigate it better to give them the best output.
Mhm. Awesome. And in closing, I'd like for you to share briefly for that younger generation, those who are 18, maybe voting for the first time, maybe folks who are in college away from home, so they didn't vote, when they were in their, early 20s. Just a word to them, and then also to the high schoolers, who are, I think many of them are paying attention, but to the ones that are not, what would you like to say to them?
What I would like to say is a lot of people will try to make you feel bad intellectually based on why you're voting. And what I would say to you is ignore that. The first time I voted ever, I voted for Barack Obama. I did not look up his policies. I didn't know what he was going to do. I had no idea Obamacare was coming. I strictly voted for Obama because he was black. Guess what? That wasn't right, but that's okay. That's why I voted that year. That's what I voted for, and it's okay. So I say that to say we can always get better. We can always get more informed, but it's important that you start building the habit of voting because I pose a question. Let's say it does work or it is right. Wouldn't you want to be participating? As opposed to if you're right and it's not okay, you're right, right? But there's so much money involved in politics that it taught me that something is here. So we should be paying attention and trying to get better little bit by little bit. I don't expect you to be a politician or economist the first year you get into it. Lord knows I wasn't. But What you want to do is get more informed, more informed, more informed. So in the next presidential cycle and 2 cycles from now, you're a way more informed voter and you have an idea of what sections of policy affect you the most.
Fantastic way to close out. Larry Paul, thank you so much for your time, sir. I'm sure I'll be seeing you again very, very soon in some capacity. Blessings to
Yes.
you as well, friend.
Thank you, Jacque. It's always a pleasure.
You're welcome. And there you have it, folks. Bridge the Vote, Jacque R.E.A.C.H, Trenton 365. This is an opportunity for us to talk about politics. And it's not something that we should only be talking about during election season. Politics and politicians, especially ones who are already elected, this is a full-time 365 every day of the year job. If you're not prepared, you're not ready for that, maybe you ought to think about another profession. And to the folks who are voting, make sure you know all the candidates. Like my guest Larry Paul said, dig a little deeper. Don't just go with the one that you're used to or the party that you're used to or that is in your ear the most or on your screen the most. Dig a little deeper. Find out who those other candidates are. And for those who are not voting, oh, please, I really suggest that you take one out of what Larry said. Be a little selfish. Be a little selfish about what you're feeling. This is the time when you can go in there and do whatever you want. No one's going to know it was you. Not just because your parents, your grandparents, your spouse, your friends. You can go in there and be selfish for what you want to do. But we encourage you here at Bridge the Vote. If you're going to do that, at least be educated about it. I'm Jacque Howard for Bridge the Vote. Remember, it's always about justice, peace, and humility.